Hello, everyone. My name's Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Malcolm Crummy and Ian Bridgewater from TOA. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Aye, very well, and this is certainly going to be an interesting one for me to see how much I really know and to dust off some of the cobwebs. Ian, just tell me your role within TOA, sir.
So I'm the UK Managing Director. So I've been with TOA 34 years. So I started as a service engineer, worked my way through the company, project technical manager, company director, and so found myself as the UK MD.
Congratulations. As we would say back in my fire service terms, you've gone from firefighter to chief in the same brigade. So, and that's a great achievement. I think that looking at TOA and their core business to design and build voice, alarm, and public address systems, you must have seen quite a difference over the years of how things have changed and how quite rightly this is now forming part of legislation.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of legislation comes in from disasters, and obviously there was the Bradford fire, Hillsborough. You also had King's Cross back sort of like the late 80s, 90s, which then brought in a lot of change to legislation, rather than just having a general sort of public address system that you could hope worked when there was an emergency. You then became fully monitored voice evacuation systems, which had to comply to the relevant British standards, and now comes under European standards. So as well as complying to the British legislation, it also has to comply to European EN54, which is a product standard, which obviously makes sure the equipment that is being installed has been third-party certificated, which means you've got that insurance that the equipment is right for the job, which is obviously very important.
Most definitely. One of the most common things I discuss with people on podcasts and in general is the need to show due diligence in relation to standards. There are far too many companies out there that are winging it, and clients end up finding they've invested in equipment that is not fit for purpose. And so the ability to carry out procurement and test the systems prior to and make sure that they fit the necessary legislation where they're being installed is hugely important. Malcolm, coming to you, I think with what Ian's just told us about the products and the development, that must make you really happy as a sales manager when you're going out to the client, knowing you've got such a great background in terms of the longevity of the company and the products that are manufactured.
It is indeed, yeah. I mean, TOA is celebrating its 90th year this year, so we are one of the oldest and most reliable companies in the audio industry. So to have that pedigree behind us to manufacture competent and reliable products for this industry, which your products are being used as a life safety solution, so they have to be reliable, they have to be compliant to international standards as well. So with the backing of a large global organization, that is really key.
Yeah, very much so. And again, with clients or potential clients carrying out their due diligence, they don't need to go too far to look at the credibility of TOA. And one of the things I often say to people that are asking my advice about should they or shouldn't they go with a company is that if a company are worth their salt, they'll give you the names of some of their clients who are happy to provide testimony for them. And to me, whether you're hiring a painter, a decorator, or a carpenter, if you get testimony from somebody that's used them and are happy, then that goes a long way to the decision-making process. we discussed a little bit off air about a little bit of my background and interest in relation to crowd dynamics, and some of the work and research I did in relation to how people react to voice and the actual voice that's being in a firm but fair manner, and how within the events industry that is normally somebody that's in a high visibility jacket that's seen as a person of authority. That is now been backed up hugely by the systems you guys are manufacturing, researching, and the innovation and technology that is being put into them. So an interesting fact that I've seen is that research indicates that 75% of people respond more rapidly to voice announcements. Ian, give me a little bit more about some of the research that brings these sort of percentages out to us.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting study. Unfortunately, we're all a little bit like sheep, and a bell goes off, a sounder goes off, and we all stand around and we look at each other, wondering what there is. Is it the fire alarm? Is it some other sort of intruder alarm? I've done it myself in a supermarket. Alarm goes off. I'm quite happy. I'll just keep wandering around doing my shopping. So some studies was done, some research, and they videoed some students. They asked them to come in, like fill out some questionnaires, and they set the alarm off, and they just sat there and sat there and sat there. And it was a good sort of 2, 3, 4 minutes until, this alarm's still going away. Somebody thought, well, maybe this is something important. And, one person sort of got their bits, walked out. Then maybe a little bit later, some others followed. So it was really, there's an alarm going off. It's nothing serious. And then they did exactly the same thing with a different group, but having a pre-recorded message. Basically, there's an incident, please evacuate. And almost straight away, the people got up and they left the building. So obviously, the difference from a fire alarm going off and, a spoken message, especially if you're in a building which there's a lot of public, and they don't understand, maybe the building, how you've entered, how you exit. I mean, obviously, as being from the brigade yourself, most people exit the way they come in. And that's quite an interesting thing. You don't look for the exit, you look for which way I came, which maybe isn't the best way. So with a voice actually telling you, how to exit the building, sometimes giving you live voice announcements to tell you maybe use a particular route, it makes a massive difference to the actual reaction time to people and being able to, evacuate the building. So, yeah, we need to listen to what that voice says rather than just sit there and think, no, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got that. It's one of the things I learned was about the beautiful polished doors that have got a fire exit sign over them, but people don't know what's behind the door. So there is that fear of pushing the door and knowing what's there. And one of the pieces of work I did recently with a client was when there's a need to evacuate, if you put somebody in a high-vis jacket next to the door, then open the door and usher people that way, then they will take notice, which is just the human way of doing what that voice says. Malcolm, to you, in relation to the work you do with clients out on the ground, high-rise buildings is something of interest since the tragedy at Grenfell, and also sports stadia where we're seeing huge numbers of people either there to watch sports or, as we've seen recently, to enjoy the Eras tour or other huge concerts. So when you're sitting down and working out plans with clients, what is their understanding, or is it very much down to you to educate them and build up their knowledge and understanding?
It can be a little bit of both. There is certainly a lack of knowledge on the design side sometimes, where we would be asked to propose a design as opposed to follow a design. So based on our experience, we would know how to design a system really. I think also sticking to that design on the kind of tender side is an issue as well. Sometimes it's a race to the cheapest solution, which is not always the best solution, or doesn't always follow the specification. So there's a lot of work still to be done on the education side for all parties involved, both the consultants, both the client, both the contractor, both the integrator as well. And if we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, the client will end up with the exact compliance system that they need, not necessarily a system that they want. So that's really, really important. And that goes for high-rise buildings, it goes for sports stadiums, it goes for shopping centres, anywhere where there's a significant amount of people with multiple exits. You need to be able to control how they leave the building in an orderly manner so that there's not crushes, there's not mistaken messages telling them to go somewhere they shouldn't be. So it's really important that the design is done right from the very beginning.
Yeah, I agree. And I often say to people that you need to put aside what you want and ensure that you're getting what you need. And it's a phrase I often use is you need to get the must-have, i.e. the legislative requirements in place first, and then see whether you've got sufficient budget to allow you to have the nice-to-have. And if you've not got sufficient budget for either, then you've got to go back to the drawing board and look for a totally different system. But we see in so many different areas of the industry where people are buying what they like rather than what they must have. And they're then finding themselves in a situation where, well, we've got to find money for the must-have because we've bought the nice-to-haves and we've now got to go scrimping the savings. Whereas you talk very much there about the procurement and tender process. One of the biggest frustrations to me is how organisations fail to understand the importance of the tender document. We all know that we want a jacket that keeps us warm, and we want a jacket that keeps us dry, and we want it red. Well, we could go out and find a million of those. What standard do we want it to? How many washes do we want it to be able to go through? And it's all those individual little things that need to be put down quite tightly in a tender that allows you guys to be able to work on a level playing field against the more unscrupulous companies out there that import their stuff and it's got a 8 to 10 week delivery time, which means it's coming on a boat from somewhere else in the world that is not necessarily what they need or the public deserve. So there's those challenges, and I agree with you that training is by far one of the important factors in that whole process. So if you train everybody correctly and say we're all here for one reason, and that is to protect people, prevent injury or fatalities, because nobody wants to be stood in front of the coroner with his funny wig on when they're reading out a list of things that have gone wrong that have led to those fatalities. So, Malcolm, I'm going to come to you and look at the transition to voice alarm and how this will impact on evacuation in the future.
Yeah, well, I think as Ian covered earlier, the addition of voice to a life safety system is key to increasing the reaction times of the public in that space. We've all sat there and continued drinking our coffee while the alarm goes off. But when you hear a voice telling you what the emergency is and what to do about it, you react much quicker. You get up off your seat and you go to that nearest exit. So we've seen a growth in voice evacuation over the last 10 years, maybe 10 plus years. Unfortunately, it's not a legal requirement to have in every single building. It's a nice to have, and there are British standards to comply to. But you can just have a sounder system and be compliant with the law. I think once you put in a voice evacuation system, obviously that has to meet the standards that it is controlled by. So the EN54 standards and the British standards. So yeah, as I said already, again, design of the system is really key. so that the voice evacuation system is the best suited to the actual project or application that it's working within. So whether that's phased evacuation for multi-level buildings or even shopping centres, to more bespoke systems for airports and football stadia, it has to be designed properly with everybody's input.
Yeah, and again, it's like you say, if it's not designed properly, you're gonna end up with something that's not fit for purpose. In terms of voice evacuation systems compared to the audible sounders, price difference, is there much difference in price in relation to the two systems?
Do you mean the voice criers, the ones that just spit out an automated message, or just tones?
No, difference between voice and tones, really, in terms of what I call the old system compared to the new.
There's not a massive difference, no, because again, the benefit of a voice evacuation system is it is acting as a PA, public address, and background music system 99% of the time. So you are combining two systems into one with the economies of scale that gives you. So, you hope it works all the time as just a PA background music system, but when it gets triggered by the fire alarm, then it takes over and then you have your automated messages and your live emergency messages to help with the evacuation of the building.
So the system, from a layman's perspective, we talk about an audio and a voice evacuation and the tripping to the standard messages, but that can be overridden at any point by manual activation?
By a responsible person, yes. So ideally somebody appointed from the security management team or the fire personnel.
Yeah, exactly. And having listened to you both and being acutely aware of how we sit there and wait for the alarm to stop and think, hopefully it's not going to go again, especially when you have just woken up in the hotel room or whatever. That we are so, what's the word, relaxed about alarms. And I am probably more acute, as my family would tell you. If the alarm goes off, then we're off. We'll get down. We'll get out of there as fast as we can. And I'm a very keen one of knowing where the exit is before I sit down and have my dinner in a restaurant, or more importantly, in a pub. But yeah, I think that knowing now how human beings react, anybody that's looking to put a system into a new build or retrofit, then voice has got to be the way. Because how many places are we looking at? The sports stadia, the shopping centre, they've all got background music going all the time.
Exactly.
So it just makes perfect sense to include the two into one. But that goes back to education, research, and Malcolm, where you come in when you're out there on the road talking to the teams that are sitting down with the designers. Ian, I'm going to come to you now, and we're going to look at legislation. And I think that legislation is, to me and you, the most important thing. But it's amazing how many people think they're above the legislation and they don't need to comply. So just tell me a little bit about the importance of understanding the legislation behind voice evacuation and the impact.
Yeah. So all voice evacuation systems have had to comply with BS 5839 Part 8 for quite a few years. Before that, it was 7443. So there's been British standards which have come in since the early 90s. So that's the installation, the cable type to be used. Obviously, it needs to be in a fire-rated cable. Those have obviously changed over the years and been adapted to modern techniques. More reliable amplifiers on equipment has taken away the need of some of the redundancy and dual circuits. So we've just come out with a new 2023 version of 5839 Part 8, which mentions a lot about networking as well now. So all of that is to do with the installation side of it, how the systems are operated. We also have, similar to like the fire alarm systems, we have a different category. So we have from like a V1, which is a very basic system, which is connected to the fire alarm system. It triggers us. we send out a spoken message through the speakers, and that's it, all the way up to a V5, which can be like a hybrid system in a big sports centre. And as you go through the different types, you can have different pre-recorded messages, live announcements to different areas. As Malcolm said earlier, these are used by a responsible person or somebody from the fire brigade. Where the fire alarm panel is, you'll have a meeting point for the brigade when they arrive to the site, and they can either operate the microphone or they can have somebody there in like the control room who can operate it for them. So again, it's very important that the system is easy to use, it's understandable, any writing on there is legible. Most of the time they just use all call, but they do have the options of maybe speaking to different areas or sending evacuation messages to different areas and override the preset structure which is being controlled from the fire alarm. So that covers all of the BS requirements, which is obviously unique for the UK, and a lot of sort of other countries adopt the British standards, namely Ireland, South Africa, even into places like Hong Kong, where obviously it's old British territories, and those standards have sort of stayed with them. And then we have sort of the European standard for the product itself. So you mentioned earlier that obviously 90-year-old company, we're very good on our reliability. We've been around a long time. There are other companies who are, new to the market, a lot of import, and if they're not compliant to these European standards, you cannot use the system. It's not an either or. It has to be EN or it has to be BS. It has to be both. And I think the good thing about the EN54, although it's expensive because you have to have it third-party certificated, it has to be compliant. They're the ones who are saying, yes, this complies. You're not self-certificating, which is obviously very, very important. And there's sort of three different parts to that standard, which is for the power supplies, the control equipment, and the loudspeakers. So they all have to have their own different types of testing. So I say it's very, very important that equipment, meets those standards.
Yeah, exactly, and like you say, the differing pieces of legislation, differing standards, the fact they each need to comply to their own separate part of that. That little bit of understanding from those few sentences there means to me that I'm not going to go and buy something for somebody that says I can put this in within a couple of hours, it'll be up and running.
Exactly.
You don't need to worry about anything else, sir. And
Yeah.
So that leads me on very nicely to how training provision enables you to get that message across to the installers and ensure they've got the right skills in installation and maintenance of the systems that they are putting in, and ensuring that they meet the right standards. So that must be one of the big things for you in ensuring that they're getting that right message.
Yeah, I mean, we're very keen to educate not only the end users sometimes, because they don't know. They come to us and say, "What do I need?" Well, that's really down to you, your building, your cause and effects, how you want to control your building. But it's the installer, how to install the systems, the type of cable, making sure that the speakers are set to the correct levels, because these are 100-volt line speakers. They have transformers. You can set different levels for different speakers. So you might put a ceiling speaker in an office environment, maybe tap it at like 1.5 watts, and then you have a speaker in a toilet where it'd be even lower. You don't install all speakers at a maximum wattage, because it'd be an absolute nightmare with trying to balance the system and overloading the amplifiers or having way too big amplifiers for the system, and it's not required. So we like to educate and train the the installers, not only on our equipment, but the standards as well. So it's very important from that point of view. And of course, we give them full understanding of how our equipment operates, how it's built, how it goes together, The maintenance side of it, we're quite lucky with our sort of main system is that it has a built-in maintenance facility, so you can log into that and it basically tells you what the faults are. So it gives us the opportunities. So we also offer like remote maintenance. They can connect with their laptop. We can connect maybe like with TeamViewer, and we can help them diagnose what the problems are remotely, rather than them just, haphazardly trying to work out what's wrong with the system. So we're very keen on supporting our customers in every way. But we offer training in house. Obviously, since COVID, there was a lot of online training. We still offer a lot of that, because sometimes a company can't get 30 engineers down to our office all in one go, but maybe they can do a morning in their office and we can do that remotely. It's nice if we can actually get them to our office and hands-on with the equipment, but we do offer the hybrid sort of training and hands-on in our office.
I suppose with the importance of that is that they're the people the client sees face to face. They're the people that are actually going out there. So to all intents and purposes, they may be a totally different company, but the person that bought your system sees them and they place them in the same bucket as you, as all from the same people. So if they've got a great experience from you and then not a very good experience from the installer, then that's going to reflect badly on you. So that ability to get them to work in a way that is identical across the board ensures that the TOA brand is kept there in high esteem. As we all know, it takes a long time to get a good name, but you can lose it in an instant. And I think the ability for the client to log on and for you to do the maintenance and fix the problem remotely. It's a bit like if I need an issue with my computer, I can deal with somebody from Apple face to face, and rather than rebooting it and then if it doesn't work, throwing it at the wall, hopefully that will make a difference. But Malcolm, I'm going to come over to you because from the customer facing side, you must see the benefits of what the training does to the installers, by what feedback you get from the clients. That must be quite satisfying.
It is, yeah. I mean, on the sales side, I would deal with obviously the salespeople from the contractor's business. But the great thing is when we go to commission a project, it's our TOA engineers on site working with the contractor's engineers on site. We like to have them shadow our engineer while we're doing the installation and commissioning so that they learn on the job and then provide, ongoing training at a later date. We think that's the best way and the most effective way of teaching them. So yeah, the feedback is generally always really, really good from the contractor's engineers to the contractor's sales team. So the management as well. And that's the feedback I would always get. Once their client is happy, they're happy, so that's the key thing.
Yeah, very much so. And it's the client that will then say to the next person, this is great. We know what we've got. We've been involved, so we understand. There's so many times where they're not involved and they see that as a piece of equipment that they're afraid to touch. Whereas if they know what it does or know what buttons not to touch, then they're not going to be afraid to use it. Malcolm, I'm going to come back to you again straight away with looking at the future of audio, and how we think this is going to affect the security and fire market, with IP products in the sector. So give me your view on that, sir.
So yeah, audio hasn't really changed in an awful long time, but there is a big change going on at the moment, which is the migration to IP. So that is speakers and amplifiers and microphones sitting on your network, your Cat5, Cat6, or fiber network, and communicating independently with each other. We're still a little way off, from the adoption on the fire side, but security seems to be the early adopter with IP speakers. Obviously, as we know, cameras, there's been IP cameras for an awful long time, and it's only now in the last 3-4 years that we have started seeing IP speakers on the market. And TOA will be one of the main companies that are leading that change. So what it means is that for remote monitoring of sites, normally you have a security center which monitors these sites remotely with just cameras, and then they trigger an alarm and they call the police. Adding audio to a security system basically deters the crime from happening in the first place. So if you can give an audible warning, say, hey, you're being reported, the police are on their way, then that usually deters the individual from carrying out that break-in. So that is really important. It saves an awful lot of time, money, and bureaucracy, really, getting a system responded to by just stopping it happening in the first place.
And again, I think that if putting yourself in the shoes of a wannabe criminal, I think that sneaking around, the next thing, having somebody talk to you will be enough to frighten you. Anyway, I think it's it goes without saying that if you can put that human interaction through a voice system to deter somebody. It's a bit like the dog barking dog sound in the early days, and if you couldn't afford a dog of your own, you used to get something that could replicate that. But exciting times ahead in terms of technology and innovation, alongside products, tried and tested products with the credibility that TOA bring to the market already, and it's so refreshing to hear that innovation, technology, research is ongoing all the time. You see so many sectors that are not seeing the benefit of regular technology and innovation and research and development. That it's sad, but I think the future's bright for TOA with the credibility of longevity, and congratulations on your 90th anniversary. And I have no doubt that given what we've talked about this morning, and the level of confidence that people will get from TOA, that that'll go on long into the future and go on to great effect. This is the point where I turn to the guests and say, is there anything that we've not covered that you want to cover? Because we're sat here having a great chat and looking at our deliverables to make sure that the listener gets the best understanding of TOA and the systems. Is there anything else that we want to talk about before we wrap it up and go our separate ways?
I'd just like to sort of really add, and it's very important that the voice alarm is designed for the application. It's not one system fits all. There's lots of different types of application, how it's used. Maybe in an office environment, high rise, the staff understand the evacuation process. If the voice goes off, they leave by the exit, they congregate outside. But then you could be, like we said, at a big sports stadium or a theatre, where a lot of the time in a performance, they'll actually put the system into a performance mode. So it's not automated with the fire alarm, and it is actually a live announcement. So you have to make sure you manage that crowd control. You'll have like the police officers, the fire brigade, the venue operators. They will be controlling the situation. They'll be looking at the CCTV. They'll be looking at the crowd, how they're reacting. They can guide people with the audio, and they can use the stewards to actually make sure that people leave, in a calm, controlled way. Because obviously, if you had, Taylor Swift singing away, and all of a sudden that cuts off and you're telling people to evacuate, and 60, 70, 80,000 people are all trying to evacuate, that's obviously chaos. So that's where it has to be in a controlled environment. So it's very, very important to design the system for the application.
Yes, definitely, and I can concur with that from the event safety side, where especially where you're dealing with major outdoor events. It's important that the artist is fully aware of the procedures in the event of the need to put a partial show stop in or a partial evacuation. they play such a huge part of that, because the public will do anything the artist tells them. We've seen that with some of the follow along bits that, especially Freddie Mercury was good at those sort of things. So the artist plays such a huge part, and like you say, one size doesn't fit all. Am I right in saying that we can use the system for phased evacuation as well?
Yep, you can completely phase. So depending on the sort of the application, but again, a lot of larger high-rise buildings, you'd evacuate the floor on fire and maybe the floor above, floor below, and then the rest of the building is put into alert. So they're aware that something is actually happening, and then automatically from the fire alarm, that will go maybe, after 3 minutes, it will go to the next floor above, next floor below. So again, depending on the fire strategy, how you evacuate, but you'll phase the evacuation because maybe you want to control people out of the building, or the staircases can't take everybody evacuating in one go. So you want to control that situation. So yeah, we can fully phase how the system is operated. And the good thing with the voice alarm is, we say that it's public address, background music, but unfortunately we've seen in recent events, it's not always a fire. It could be a terrorist attack. It could be a bomb threat. Again, you can utilize that system because at the end of the day, it's monitored, it's battery backed. It works. If a fire alarm bell goes off, what does it mean? So, we can use it for pre-recorded and live announcements to give that comfort, to the end users.
Yeah, and I think from the listener's perspective, there's an invitation. If you want to know something, go out there and learn it. At least when you're then making your decision, you can make a decision given all the facts that you've been told about. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot, and will continue learning. But I know that if I need to know any more about voice evacuation, then I know exactly where to come. And it won't be long before we run another TOA feature in IFSJ, because it's certainly an ever-changing and dynamic industry. I'm Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal, and I've had the pleasure of talking to Ian Bridgewater and Malcolm Crummy from TOA. And as always, if you need more information, go to toa.co.uk. Many thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks a lot, Duncan. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan.